All right, thank you so much for sticking around. And we all know that career comebacks are not easy, especially in 2020, after the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. Things have gotten difficult. I know you all will agree. If you do agree, and 2020 was a tough year, just type in yes in the comments, right? With women having to push through and take on twice as many additional roles and responsibilities, finding a roadmap for career comeback seemed blurry than before, right? Over the last year, though the year was difficult, we have seen that many companies have worked on reevaluating and reforming their policies and strategies to ensure that they accommodate the best talent. Discussing on the need for a collaborative and continuous effort from the corporate world to fix this leaky talent pipeline we have a lovely lineup of speakers here. We have Dr. Vandita Gupta, business leader, Ethicon Wound Healing and Homeostates Johnson & Johnson, India and South Asia. We have Chala Pandian, Associate Vice President and HR, Ellen Udi, Head Biocon. We have Shama D, Strategy and Transactions Service Delivery Leader, EY GDS. We have Surat Chetri, Regional Director, HR, Airbus India and South Asia, Airbus Group India Private Limited. And the session is moderated by Sonam Bhagat, Managing Editor, Business Head, Executive Director, Dias World. It is so lovely to have all of you here. Hi, Sonam.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for joining in. To all our speakers, if we can have everybody's cameras on. Yes. All right. To our lovely audience, please feel free to use the Q&A box to send us your questions, and we'll have them answered by our lovely panel towards the end of the session, right? So yes, we have all our speakers, we have our moderator. Over to you, Sonam.
Thank you so much, Marissa. Good morning, everyone. I hope we're all audible and visible to each other.
Yes, loud and clear and clear. Everybody is looking lovely.
Fantastic. Great. Okay, so let's begin. Let's face it, making their way back into the workforce after taking a career break for whatever reason wasn't ever a smooth ride. Come 2020, and this has just got that much harder. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, women started bearing double and triple burdens at home. They had to now do more at home, more people who were around 24/7, figure out how to tackle online classes and fussy children, balance this with the added housework and much more. Where was the time to even think about going back to their careers? All this made it much harder for women to chart their routes back into the world of work. The bottom line is that keeping talented women from the workforce and therefore losing out on the diversity balance is bound to inevitably hurt businesses. This panel looks at the need for a collaborative and continuous effort from the corporate world to fix this leaky talent pipeline. With me, I have Mr. Surat Chetri, who is the Regional Director HR for Airbus India and South Asia. He started his career way back in 1993 with Bata India and brings with himself a total of 28 years of rich experience across acclaimed employers like Bosch, General Motors, Textron, and now Airbus. Ms. Shama Dheer is the Service Delivery Leader for EY GDS Strategy and Transitions. She is a partner and leads the SAT team of over 2,200 professionals in India and Poland. With a collective experience of over 25 years in global MNCs, she also manages key support verticals, that is talent, technology, and finance, critical for business management at EY GDS. Dr. Vandita Gupta is the business leader, Ethicon Wound Healing and Homeostates, Johnson & Johnson, India and South Asia. A physician by education, followed by an MBA. Dr. Gupta has 17 years of experience in drawing on leadership, strategy, and commercial roles to lead and support businesses. Mr. Chala Pandian Pichai is the AVP and Head Learning, Talent, and Organizational Transformation for Biocon. Prior to joining Biocon Biologics, Chala was heading HR in MEG MSD for cluster countries such as Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, and Indonesia. He has extensively worked on diversity, inclusion, and equity initiatives in his past assignments for more than a decade. especially in the areas of women leadership and talent development across multiple countries. So let's begin. My first question is to Suraj. Suraj, you have won many HR awards and have been a diversity champion at the Accelerate and Diversity Awards 2020 and 2021. Crucial years when it comes to engaging diversity in organizations. India's workforce participation rate of women returning to work after a career break declined by 20% in 2020. Have you personally witnessed this fall, and how far back has the pandemic taken efforts in bringing back women into the workforce, Suraj?
Thank you, Sonam. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
I think the answer is in the question itself that you've asked me. One of the key reasons for these humble recognitions is because our situation at Airbus India is completely the opposite. Now, having said that, it makes me think if we have a few more organizations like ours, then probably the problem is not 20%, but it's much more severe and grave. In fact, this pandemic in the other way around has given us the opportunity to get the creme de la creme, as we say in French, the best of the best. But one needs to be internally prepared within the organization rather than looking at, what is available externally. And I'd like to explain that a little bit. And it's the same things that we also as an organization started doing internally a few years ago, educating the managers and consciously removing the unconscious bias that they had. Because end of the day, if there is no acceptance internally within the organization itself, it becomes very difficult, it just becomes a number game then, and probably satisfaction is not there from both the sides, and many a program will drop off midway because you don't have the acceptance internally. Of course, commitment of the managers is important, not targets. In sense of commitment, I mean to do something, to support the ecosystem, to leverage what is available. And what happens is we have open discussions with managers, and thanks to the speak up and no retaliation policy within our company or our culture, it makes it much easier to bring everything out on the table. We have people who've returned back, who participate with us in these discussions. So it makes it much more easier. And I can tell you one thing, as long as it doesn't become a business objective and it is seen as something driven by HR, it's not going to succeed at all. And I've felt that. So today we have internal business champions in every function and division, and this network yields great results. And what we try to do is we let the diverse population speak for itself. So yes, we are a little bit more strict in hiring, folks who are returning back to take a second break. We call it fly again because we are in the aerospace domain. But we let them speak about the program. So it's like this diverse population speaks for itself internally as well as externally, and they become magnets, that can draw others into the organization. But the key is once you have all this in place, once you have the acceptance in place, business will pull. Today, if within 6 months I don't run a program, if I don't get people, I get pulled up in HR. If the recruitment slate is not 50-50, I get pulled up in HR. And the other thing that we've done is we've also slowly in our journey looked at the systems and processes and tried to change it to reflect the culture and the diversity mix within the organization. Now you would say, yeah, nice talk. You've talked a lot about everything, but give us some numbers. In terms of numbers, we grow kind of 2% every year. We've had 2 successful programs for women that we have rehired, what we call Fly Again. Our diversity, every year we hire at least about 35% diverse talent in our new recruitment pipeline. And I think when I look at the last 2 years of COVID, when I look at last year and this year, the returnees, the number of returnees that we've had, I would say is combined of the past 5 years. So I would say we've taken advantage in another way. We are still excited. We know we are still on this journey. And of course, any help that we get from anyone, including, people that have worked in this domain, like Jobs for Her and the others, we are happy to take. And I'll end with one question that was asked in one of my last conferences. And they said, when do you stop supporting women employees? And my answer was never. It's an ongoing initiative. It needs to be done at all stages. Probably we can only stop once it becomes an integral part of the DNA of an organization. And that's our focus. And we are also, as Airbus, on this journey. We are not there yet. We are learning. And this is one opportunity to learn, to understand what the others are doing. But we are learning fast. And we can take all the help and support we get from experts, from organizations, working with a passion in this field. Back to you, Sonam.
Good to hear that, Suraj. I'm sure we'll come back with more for you. My next question is to Chela. Chela, you've been at the helm of organization, strategy, and culture of continuous innovation. How important is diversity in such a context? And how do businesses lose out if it's getting harder and harder to bring women back into the workforce?
Yeah, so when we look at innovation, innovation is at its best when diversity inclusion is traveling with it closely. Whilst curiosity can fuel innovation, but diversity and inclusion advances innovation. And without it, you would find that you're not best at innovation. So having said that, the second part of your question is, how does business miss out on not having the so-called leaky talent pipeline? And does that really impact organization? Does that really a gap? The answer is big yes, because there is a huge opportunity which will be lost by the organization or society at large if we don't look into this pipeline, which has lots of advantage for organization. Number one, it's a ready talent. We're talking about career women who have taken a break. We're not talking about the fresh graduates who have not found a job. We're talking about people who have worked and taken a career break. So you have there is a readiness there. So it's a ready talent available. The second part, interestingly, is they're readily available. When they decide to choose to come back to organization, they're readily available. So there is nothing like in HR terms, notice period, right? You don't have to wait long. So these are great advantages there, right? But there are, and then us Neha from the chief executive of Jobs for Her, she very nicely said they have a fire in the belly, right? To prove themselves again. It's kind of 2.0. They're ready to find the next best version of themselves. Now, there are two parts to this, or two aspects to this in terms of coming back to the organizations, or when they restart their career. One is an internal, one is an external. The internal factor is about themselves, right? So we heard from the previous opening speaker, she was very nicely articulating her personal story in terms of Harshula was talking about her personal story, very inspiring. The kinds of odds she went through, and then how did she make it to the big achievements, what she has got for herself. I think that's a very inspiring story. So there is a lot of internal aspects there. So I could see that one is confidence, one is willingness to come back, and then not getting demotivated because of the break. And those are the important factors for an individual to look at. And the external factor is from the environment which an organization can create, like the way Suraj was talking about. Organization should be willing to create an environment for people to come back. Of course, largely working on the diversity, but is also specific to focus on the women who have taken a career break and those coming back in terms of an environment with an inclusivity there. And second, in terms of an opportunity for upskilling them. And third, mentoring, if there is an opportunity to mentor them, finding internal mentors for them so that they get their confidence back and start building their career again with the same fast track, right? So those are the external environment which really enables them. From our organization perspective, so we have been great. We have been very. I would say, I would phrase it. So we've been having diversity and inclusion as an integral part of our the way we identify ourselves. It's a part of our culture. Like Suraj also talking about, it cannot be outside the culture. So diversity and inclusion is part of our culture. And the other point which I wanted to share before I close is the leaders who runs the diversity and inclusion should not be only from HR. It has to be the business leaders. I think that's where we see a great opportunity, and that's where we see ourselves identifying diversity and inclusion as a part of business leaders' imperative, and that's the growth path we are seeing. So I'll close with that, and then probably wait for some more points later.
I'll come back to you. What I really, really liked was, of course, the whole readiness aspect that you mentioned, and that they're in a 2.0 mode. And of course, where Suraj and you definitely kind of came together was that, there must be diversity in leadership as well, and they should be owning it up as much as perhaps the HR. That's when it'll actually percolate down to the grassroots. My next question is to Dr. Vandita Gupta. Dr. Gupta, in your expertise, how important is it to fix the leaky talent pipeline? And what measures or incentives are required to bring women back into the workforce?
Thank you, Sonam. One word for that is vital, right? And I'll tell you why. At J&J, it's no secret, right? For the kind of diverse patients, diverse healthcare professionals, consumers that we address with so many diverse needs, we actually have all the reasons to understand the value of diversity, and therefore have a talent bucket which is not leaky, a bucket which is reflective of diversity. And how do we make that happen? The same principle that Suraj and Sheila alluded to, right? Bring it into our culture. Have an ecosystem wherein we're creating a culture of belonging, where every employee, and not just the diverse employee, is valued, is empowered, at least in our sector, to say that I'm playing a part wherein I'm creating a more healthy world, right? And practically, what does this do? This makes fixing the leaky talent pipeline everyone's responsibility, every employee's responsibility. So practically, to translate that English into actions, at J&J, we have practically all people managers. And I'll extend not just business leadership, even enabling functional leaderships have goals which are diversity and inclusion goals. And it's not just about gender. There's a broader theme to that, which I can mention later. But again, and there are two elements to it. The first element that I spoke about is that for all the diversity that we have in the organization, how do we retain them? And that's where we spoke about culture. The second part is when they're in, how do we basically get them in, right? So the first is the basics. And I'll refer to my example. In my entire career with J&J, I've not had conducted a single interview wherein the slate to hire was not gender diverse, right? So we're encouraging that right from the starting. What we're also encouraging is having interview teams that build in diversity of thought, gender, experience, and the unconscious bias that Suraj spoke about. There's a specific designated training for our teams, for our people managers to develop that capability. Another interesting point that I want to touch about, something that we've lately embarked upon, is how do we use technology to augment this? So what we've done is we've leveraged an augmented platform for job postings, and you'd see that using a pioneering artificial intelligence engine. What it does is it provides a real-time guidance on how to enhance our postings for diverse candidates. And driven by this, we actually have data which is now telling us that there's an increase not just in qualified applicants, but also gender diverse candidates when we're using this portal. So and then I also heard the mention about pay parity, right? There was a question on that just before this panel started. So we're doing regular analysis there from time to time on our own numbers and ensuring that we're inching every single day towards being an organization that is supportive of gender pay parity. That's one. And now I'm going to touch briefly upon a very different thing on the same lines that Suraj mentioned, fly again. So our equivalent here at J&J is, we call it Reignite, and it's my most favorite part, wherein we genuinely believe, we come from an organization where 130 years ago, out of our 14 employees, 8 were women. We were the first ones ever to engage women as scientists, as our associates along the length and the breadth of the globe. So from that culture, we believe that, any reason of a pause in your career, it could be getting married, having children, pursuing academics, it shouldn't stand in the way of your next breakthrough, right? It should enhance it. And therefore, we launched this returnship program in India, and we were the first ones to launch it in the continent. We called it Reignite. It's a program which is a paid returnship program for experienced professionals, very, very relevant to our conversations today, that are ready to return to work after a career break, especially in areas of, we call it STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And this very month, we got very talented 9 women join J&J as Reignite associates after successfully completing a detailed evaluation process, including career discussions. So that, I believe, is setting the cultural tonality and supporting actions to bring that tonality in. Back to you, Sonam.
So again, you've spoken about how you're using artificial intelligence. They say AI actually is taking away jobs. Here you are using AI to enable diversity in employment. I think that is definitely fantastic and work checking out for all our audience here. Another question to you, Dr. Gupta. As a diversity and inclusion and employee health and safety enthusiast, you have led several initiatives with a focus on diverse abilities and mental health, including your work with the American Chambers of Commerce. Please share some insights.
I'll start with a very recent, humbling perspective. I believe that our values, our leadership was fully tested in wave 2. When all of us, we found ourselves in situations where there was no playbook to refer to. It was unsettling. We saw the pandemic inch closer to our employees, our friends, our families. But what was very humbling about this whole experience? I think as individual organizations, I saw that clearly in J&J, as industry bodies, AmCham, people around us, we all had this heightened sense of responsibility during this crisis. And not just towards our families, it was towards our communities, right? Irrespective of any biases, religion, caste, region, industry. Isn't that remarkable? And I think that is the foundation of D&I, which is reflected in our real lives. Inclusion of all diversity and equitably. And that to me is the whole dimension around D&I that was very humbling to me. But especially on mental health, you asked that question. Many of us have started talking about mental health now during this pandemic. But how many of us realize that in a course of about 25, 30 years, starting 1990, India's been doubling its numbers every 15, 20 years on mental health issues, right? And the pandemic, it simply just compounded the problem, right? So how do we make sure that we're able to pull up real resources, real support, not just talk about it, elevate these conversations and offer support and love to those who really need it? And I'm going to anchor a bit around, again, the cultural piece and how J&J has taught me on bringing these issues up and addressing them, not just directly, but also creating a culture around that, an ecosystem around that. So the first is around combating the whole stigma, creating safe spaces where you and I don't feel comfortable talking about our mental health issues, but we feel comfortable talking sometimes about our physical issues. So how do we make people comfortable sharing what they're struggling with, right? We're encouraged to talk about that. That's one. And then, certain things that you can do wherein you're creating a culture of compassion. You're telling your people you care. For example, at J&J, we revisited employee well-being strategies. We kept in mind the extended needs of the families of our working parents, our children. We introduced the caregiver leave of up to 2 months, additional insurance, special medical coverage, our virtually enhanced programs. For example, our reimbursement programs are focused around mental health, well-being, and so on and so forth. We launched a mental health diplomat employee resource group. There was 24/7 access to employee assistance programs. Why am I mentioning all this, Sonam? Because we found that at the end of these 18 months, there was a huge lot of collateral benefit that came out of these initiatives of having supported us and enabled us to create an ecosystem which creates a sense of emotional and psychological safety in your associates. Hence, one, giving them a confidence to come out with their mental issues, and that the organization understands this is normal. And then the other one, importantly, is to say that the organization is there to support with them. So here were a few very recent insights that I embarked upon in the last 12 to 18 months of my journey.
Thank you, and that is fantastic to hear. I remember one of your one of the things that you said right at the beginning, that the field you are in and the space you're in, you have to be diverse. You're a company that has to be, and there is no choice, because you're addressing an audience that is diverse. Your target is diverse. So I'll come back to you, Dr. Gupta. My next question is to Shama. Shama, as a business leader, people agenda is your top priority. Which are the two biggest challenges that you feel are the reasons that women are finding it hard to return to work? And of course, how is EY GDS looking at addressing these issues?
Sure, thanks, Sonam. It's good to be with this wonderful panel today. I think the first thing is we are in the business of consulting. So our only asset is people. Unlike many organizations, it's a people's business. So we have to be very focused on people agenda and diversity. Having diversity in our talent pool is, is of utmost priority. The biggest challenge that I see, and that has been talked not only in this forum, but even anywhere we go and discuss women coming back to the workforce, I think the biggest challenge is the mind state of women themselves. It's a good balance of what the earlier speaker Harshula was mentioning about, are you having a good infrastructure support system back at home within the society? That is one bit of a challenge, but I think the larger challenge is women themselves, because it's a mind frame in which we operate, right? We always try to carry the entire burden. And let me put it, the guilt on our own shoulders of coming back to work. When I had, I've never taken a career break overall, except for 5 months of maternity break. Having said that, the journey was not so easy. I left my 6-month-old daughter to a daycare center, which was unheard of about 17, 18 years back. And, I had all sort of social pressures coming and saying, what are you doing, kind of a thing. And I was fortunate enough to find a good support system externally rather than at home at that point of time. But one of the things that always kept on, moving on my mind, and I'm sure that is there on most of the, participants today or women workforce, is the guilt of leaving the child at home. The more guilty we are, I can tell you, and Dr. Gupta is here, she's been working on mental health, the child senses that kind of a guilt more sooner than any one of us realizes. So we don't have to be guilty of it. I think working is part of what we are. Part of our recognition of our own selves, as much as we want to balance now, whether it's work at home, whether it's working in organization, or whatever field you have passion for. So I think women themselves are responsible to either carry that guilt or, have that burden on their shoulders and not have that. That's the internal factor of it. I think the external factor is equally important, Sonam, that we should not ignore. It's the society at large, it's the organization's preparedness that we should have, and we should be open to having women coming back from their breaks for whatsoever reasons. It could be maternity, which is a more common cause, but I've also seen many women taking break to take care of their parents, to take care of their in-laws, which is equally a good, and important element of taking a break. So I think the setup, the entire industry needs to open to it. I was very happy to hear Suraj or Dr. Gupta when they were talking of, how the organizations are really preparing. It's a very similar kind of infrastructure that we would have in EY. We do have daycare centers or tie-ups with the daycare centers nearby where our offices are. Even in pandemic, we had virtual daycare centers. Now one can always argue how good they were if you were putting kids in front of screen, but that's the best we could do in the virtual world, right? We do have flexi working options, which is very important in a consulting kind of an environment. There are opportunities for women. I would have seen many women colleagues coming up and saying for X period of time, we won't be able to travel as much, but have flexible options available to them, have a good alternate career options. And that to me is very important as a setup in the organization, how open we are for our women colleagues and to have women back in the workforce, because that makes an organization a very well-balanced organization. It's good to walk into a boardroom full of men and feel pride that you're the only women there. But I can tell you that discussion is not healthy. You need to have a good bit of emotional and logical balance when you're having those discussions. So I would encourage, and that is what we always encourage within GDS across teams, is have a right balance. We're not there, Suraj, as yet on 50-50 ratio, but we are inching towards that. And consulting is always a difficult domain to say. Another thing, one last thing that I would leave the answer with is pandemic has also given us challenges, but it has given us opportunities. Earlier in consulting environment, we did not see many opportunities of working from home. Today, those opportunities are open more than ever. So I would think that should open up a lot more opportunities as compared to where it was, in 2018 or 2019. So we should take full-fledged advantages of that as we go forward. So now I hope that answers your question.
It does, and one of the things that that you said right at the beginning, that I think it's more in our minds as women that we want to be the best at everything, the best mother, the best wife, the best daughter-in-law, and we get so much guilt when we are, when we're leaving something. And like you said, for the child who you're actually wanting to be the best mother actually feels that you're halfway there. You're not completely there with him. You're not completely there at work. So that again brings me to my question to all of you. Are there any tips for women returnees, such as what are they doing wrong in interviews when they come back? What is your experience?
Sonam, let me take that for the very start, because what you said does resonate with me, and I call it, I am not ready syndrome. And I've talked about that earlier. Men, even if they're not ready, they're confident, they jump in and they think that they can do it. But with women, like all of you all said, you have to be 100% there. Once you're fully prepared, then only you think about getting into jobs, getting into interviews. It's not going to work that way. I think we have to learn from that, and probably even if you're 50 or 60% there, launch out. I'll give you 4 thoughts. It'll resonate very much with what Harshala has already told you all. Never lose complete contact with your colleagues and friends at the workplace where you have left. Be always informed of what's happening, what is changing, and where the industry is heading. Confidence is key in interviews. Demonstrate it, and don't be sloppy. Don't be confused and lost. And then when they ask you, you say, I was not prepared. I've taken a long break. I've been out of the market, but I will make an effort towards that. That does not cut it during interviews. Secondly, don't be apologetic about your break. Don't try to over justify why you took a break. If that organization doesn't understand why you took a break, probably it's not the organization worth working in the first place. Prepare yourself excellently, and don't take it as an entitlement. Don't think that there are quotas. that organizations have for returnees, and they have to fill the quota so that they will take you. That's not going to happen. I can only give you 4 inputs because that is what comes in the free package. Back to you, Sonam.
I think the free package was good enough. Anyone else would like to also add to that? I have 4 points from Suraj. So, Shama?
Yes. Go ahead, Kashmir. Please go ahead.
Okay. I think the only thing that I'll add on to Suraj's free package would, wear your confidence on your sleeve and just be you. I think as a setup and as a society, we have attuned our females to be justifying each and every step we do. If we just take 2 steps back, we would almost justify as to the choice we made for our kids' school, to kids' college, to activity classes, to what I made for food today, to what I told my in-laws, to what I told my husband, etc., etc. Just stop justifying yourself, have that confidence, and just be you. Just be with the flow. And I'm sure, there are organizations who need good employees. Believe me, in this industry, right now, we are almost in a stage where all of us would agree we are almost war for talent everywhere. An industry which is so short of talent, why would anybody not want to have people who have the right attitude? Don't think skills are the only things that get you there. The right attitude and the right confidence is what gets you a job back. Chela.
Sure. No, I would build on from what Shema was saying, right? So organization needs good talent, and we constantly look for a great talent. So there are 2 parts to this. One is from the organization side, and again, one from from the personal side, right? The people who have taken the career break. From organization side, what we are focused on is to create an environment where such leaders or such people, talent join us, feel inclusive. So that's where we have made our diversity and inclusive as part of our culture, right? So organizations have to come with certain programs, or at least environment and female employee-friendly policies. And so those are the aspects which an organization can do. But to answer a question in terms of what an individual can do, before even coming, I found this idea fascinating when I was talking to some of the women leaders who have taken a break. They said, I couldn't spend 8 hours at an organization, hence I took a break, but they could find 2 hours for themselves beyond whatever the priorities they had, right? Those 2 hours can be invested in upskilling. So today, the online programs, online training programs, or online schools have become more important, and it's taken a good reputation than 10 years back, right? Especially pandemic has also helped to change the mindset for people that such programs are really valuable. Those 2 hours can be invested for upskilling until you find that full time to be back in an organization. I think that would be one of my suggestions to people who have taken a break. And that's what my wife is doing, and she has taken a break and she's doing. And the second thing is building on what Suraj said in terms of, you don't have to have that mindset of I've taken a break, so I'm less confident or I'm less competent. I think it's all about bringing the skill back, right? You are going to be, again, I go back to what I started off saying, finding the next best version of yourself. So the break is only going to push you to go forward as there's a fire in the belly to prove, right? So I think one should leverage on that.
Sonam, I'll take a minute, and I'll just want to give some more confidence to all the listeners, the audience that we have, and reinforce what Suraj, Shama, and Chela mentioned. My personal experience, when I've spoken to returnees or potential returnees, 8 out of 10 of them have felt guilty of their break. So reinforcing the same point, I though it was a short one, I took a career break myself to take care of my in-laws 15 years ago for a period of 6 months. But that ability to go back with the confidence that you made the right choice, you did what was right, is something that should hold a returnee on the top of it. The second, specifically for women returnees, is, as Suraj mentioned, right? It is more women-like to walk out of a presentation and beat yourself down on those 2 points that you did not say in the presentation, versus men who would pat their back for saying those 8 points, right? So I would say, do not get the same sentiment imposed on your interviews. Always remember to reflect on examples from your past professional life that have helped you build on your strengths. That's the second one. Back to you.
Wow. So yes, I think I have my panel kind of coming together on these 4 points. One of them saying, don't be apologetic. Stop justifying yourself and don't feel guilty. Second, prepare yourself. Third, don't be entitled, like Suraj said, but at the same time, like Shama said, wear your confidence on your sleeve. Just like Dr. Gupta also reiterated that those 8 points that you said was good enough. Feel good about that. Don't keep bashing yourself up about those 2 that you did not say. And of course, never lose contact. Keep upskilling. Just like Chala also said, his wife was doing, and the rest of the panel also agreed. So Shama, that kind of adds me on a little here. That let's speak a little about the importance of reskilling, seeking out a mentor.
And Sonam, that's quite a pertinent point, not only for returnees, but let me tell for the benefit of all the listeners, that's an important point for people who are even in the workforce throughout their careers. We all need to reskill ourselves because the job expectations, the industry landscape is changing so much. It was so good to hear Dr. Gupta talking about artificial intelligence and how it is changing the way the world is looking at it. So the new age technology. Even for people who are into production industry, and some of the industries that most of us would have started our careers with would not even exist today, or the shape and form in which they exist today is very different. So I think reskilling is very important. Whether you go out, very similar to what Harshala said, go back to colleges and attend in-person classes, or you do online courses, or you look at alternates. There are organizations today who would provide higher education or reskilling along with an internship opportunities. Look out for those opportunities. There is enough available in most of the industries. Even in teaching industry, I saw some of the questions coming on, I want to go back to teaching. I want to go back to pharma industries. I think some of those industries are fantastic ground to get back and then look on for further options. So reskilling is definitely important. I'm not sure if we're only talking of higher education and formal degrees that we used to talk about 2 decades back. Even a good certification, which is a 3 months, 6 months, that you can have from many of the online platforms. It could be best of the colleges in the world that today you can have access to, which we might not have had access about 10 years back. So be open to that. And to your second point, Sonam, around mentorship, frankly, and I'm sure most of the panel would agree, when we get mails on LinkedIn, it's essentially male colleagues in the industry who would reach out and say, can we have a small chat over, XYZ opportunity in your organization? Out of 100 emails that I would get, for example, in 3 months, only 2 out of them are females reaching out. You need to be very open to reaching out in your network and whatever you consider as your network, or role models that you have within the industry, outside the industry. I think the challenge with us is we don't create role models. We don't look up role models because what we think as role models are essentially people who are perfect in each and every domain of their life. Pick up a particular domain and say, this person is doing good in this area. Can this be my role model? Can I learn 5 things from him or her? Can I learn 5 things from him or her? And mentors don't necessarily have to be people who are in your domain. There are people who are asking, how do I get back to pharma industry? Not necessarily every time you need a mentor from a pharma industry. You can pick up a mentor from any other industry. There are many people around you. Ask them how they keep themselves updated. Go back, reach out, talk. Mentorship, as they say in spirituality, guru, they can come in any shape and form. We just have to be open to receiving those energies back from the environment. And I'm sure there are a lot of them out there who would be there to help each one of us as we go forward.
One thing that I actually wanted to ask, and I think a lot of people sort of have mentioned it in their questions and even in the chat, is that, I think Suraj had said that, if you don't oversell your career break, but we are already in the year 2021, I want to know that, do you think it's fair that women are still expected to justify this big career gap on their resume, right? Because I saw this question that somebody said that, I never gave birth to a child before, but I did it. So why can't you give me an opportunity to, prove myself in this space? Yeah. Suraj, if you'd like to take this up.
Sure, thank you. I think, like I said earlier, if that organization is not ready to accept you, I think it's their loss. Probably working in an organization like that, probably we will not be beneficial in the long run itself. But end of the day, realize something, even when you've taken a break, there is a lot that you learn on the personality side. There's a lot of development that happens. There's a lot of maturity that comes in to women that have taken a break, taken care of certain aspects. And I think when you talk about that, sometimes you tend to ignore that and just say that I've taken a break and I want to get back. But probably emphasizing on what you have learned during that break, how you have learned, to be more human. How have you learned to handle multiple tasks at the same time? How have you become more efficient in the way you think and approach problems? I think that could also add another aspect when you're having this discussion. But of course, just don't go without preparation. And,
Right.
and I think someone also asked me this question on the chat, which I didn't reply. And that question was, wait, let me get back to that.
Why
About
is industrial shift easier for
why
men
in
than
the
women?
industrial shift easier for men than women? And I think we alluded to that question a little bit. It's just because the confidence that men have with what limited knowledge they have, ready to reach out to others for the job, which sometimes I don't see women doing. They want to be perfect before they reach out. And I think it's also got to do not only them, but it's also got to do with the organization. If it's a male dominant organization, probably I'd be more comfortable taking men than women. And I think internally that needs to change within organizations so that both sides, it helps both sides in the long run.
Absolutely.
Anything beyond that, what I'll have to do. Charge you all for that.
Absolutely. There's this question with Asha, which I kind of found it very fascinating. And I'd like for Shama and Dr. Vandita to answer this. She says, as a middle-aged professionals with a long break, with upskilling and having done upskilling and taking up leadership skills, the biggest challenge that I encountered in the private sector was from higher level leaders who felt threatened by her, right? So I would want to know, you as women leaders in your individual fields, have you ever felt this? And if you did, how did you tackle it? And what tips would you give for women returnees who are returning to workforce after a break, after having upskilled and everything? Shama, please go first.
Sure. Thanks, Marisa. Asha, I'll have a small advice for you, which would be, don't get threatened by people around you who would want to get threatened. My fundamental is you'll have to keep yourself strong. When you come back stronger, there are people who would be challenged, which is but of it. It's a human nature now. Understand, those people would have been in the organization for a longer period of time. They have made a place for themselves. Now there's somebody who's coming back after break. That person is strong, is confident, has got skills. So they're going to get threatened. I think, there is a good element of friendship that you need to have with these people in good way to make them comfortable. But there is also an element of, self-confidence that you need to display and say, I have confidence on the subject that I'm talking of. So there is, no bullying thing happening here. And the only way people can, kind of threaten you is only if you allow them to threaten. If you fundamentally see, Sonam, Marisa, what I'm trying to say always in most of my comments is, you have to be mentally very strong, whether it's women who are always in the workforce or returnees, more so for returnees, because you always carry this burden of, I have had a break and hence I'm coming back and hence I need to prove. The moment you take off that burden, believe me, all of us, and I'm sure Dr. Gupta would agree, when you walk into a room full of men, there is always this underlying theme, what are they talking? Are they going to? But that goes away after first 5 minutes. because you know your subject better than, I'm sorry, Suraj and Chela, but I think women, once they have a command on the subject, they have this God-gifted thing of attached emotions to their subject, which makes them, a powerhouse in themselves. So yeah.
Fully agree. 80% of my team is women.
Wow. That's lovely. Would love to hear your thoughts on this, Dr. Vandita.
Okay, so Asha, if as you're joining or as soon as you have joined, if you have people around you who are feeling threatened, I guess that's a wonderful problem to have. And I would say, if at all that should give you anything, it should give you confidence. A confidence that you have that ability in spite of having been out of the main core job or of the industry. There are people that you're in a position to threaten. And I think it is reflective of imposter syndrome on the both sides of it. I don't know if you've heard of that phenomenon, but that's a phenomena wherein you feel that it's something that you are lacking, right? You don't have confidence on your abilities. So maybe that person who's feeling threatened has imposters. I would say you walk beyond that. Most of us as women suffer from imposters at one point in life or the other, whether we accept it or not. So go beyond that imposter syndrome. As Shama beautifully coined it, wear your confidence on your sleeve, do what is right. And I have no doubt, if you're in the right organization, the culture in the organization is going to be supportive of your skill and of the confidence and of the value that you bring to the organization.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much. There's somebody in the chat who said your degree doesn't really make a big difference if you are confident and you have the right skill set. I think, yes, that's like a big takeaway from the session. My next question is actually to Chela, because Chela mentioned that his wife is also currently reskilling and, is looking to return to work. What kind of support do you think, as a husband and as a person, as a male friend or something like that? A lot of women who are upskilling and reskilling and wanting to return to workforce, most of them here at this platform right now are married women, right? The kind of support that they expect immediately would be from their family, and the first person that they would look up to would be the husbands. So this is a little in between question, what would be your advice to these women and to their husbands? Like, how can you fully support your wife, your spouse, or any woman who is returning to the workforce?
Great. I'll take this question two parts. One, I was talking to a group of my leaders yesterday at Biocon, telling them that tomorrow I'm going to be speaking. So let me do a design thinking with them to get their inputs on what they would like to hear from the speakers, right? So one of the thought which came from them is, again, relevant to this question in terms of the points such as the willingness from individual, and how do they come to the organization back without the feeling of guilty. That the guilt is what sometimes keeps their motivation level low, right? So back to your question on how I support my wife. Of course, she's now working, but when she followed me to Malaysia, when I was working in Malaysia, she had to kind of take a break from her career just to follow with me. And I started feeling guilty that her career we had to take that decision, but she decided to follow me. Which I felt guilty that she is sacrificing her career in a way, right? But what she did is, or what we together decided is for her to go and start upskilling herself in the Malaysia Institute of Human Resource Management. There is an institute. And first thing she did is she went and joined that program, and she was able to kind of get to understand the culture and the ways of working in Malaysia, which helped her to find a job in Malaysia. Now, again, we are back to Bangalore. But that's the support which I'm not providing it, just that we could decide together that that's what she needed. And of course, I was always supportive in terms of her going back whenever she wanted to. It's a choice which she made, and I'm just at the back end supporting, right? So lastly, my advice to the people whom I mentor, a lot of women, I've been part of women leadership programs internally in the organization as well as externally. So such questions comes very often, and my advice to them is about one, feel proud of the break you've taken for the reason which you know, right? If it is genuine reasons you have taken a break, and you should be proud of it, whether it is building the family or expanding the family or supporting the family, or even it could be an entrepreneurial venture you have taken a break. So you have a strong reason to why you took a break, and build that story to even the interviewer. You don't have to stop it saying or hide it or just leave it. Talk about it. Even if you spend time 3 months on something which is very important for family, you have demonstrated leadership at home. So why do you not talk about it? And then I think that's where people can benefit. Back to you.
Marissa, I just wanted to jump in because
Yeah.
I think a couple of points that I wanted to make. I was just going through the participant list and I only see most of them as women employees. Probably the organizers need to look at how we can, look at men participating in meetings like this so that they can learn a lot how to support their women partners. And secondly, I think if the man in the house takes care of the in-laws, I think the woman would be much more open to going out and doing a lot of stuff. Sorry, I couldn't resist saying that.
Well,
You
this
see
is a
Sharma and
new-
me both laughing on and
yeah,
and
Sharma,
Marissa,
yes.
Marissa, if I can add one more thing, because I see a lot of questions around women coming back. How do I financially support myself, etc.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think there are 2 points which I would want to leave all the participants with. To Suraj's point, most of them are females here. Go and talk to few, and I'm sure all of us in industry are feeling the same. There are many people who have ventured out in their entrepreneurial ventures and are now wanting to come back after 2 years, 3 years, and many of them are men, right? When they come back to interviews, they're full of confidence. They say, you know what, we've dabbled into an entrepreneurial venture. These are the 5 things that we learned, and hence I'll be able to add value to your organization. But when women come back after a break, they're always, buried under this guilt of, I have taken a break. So if anything, for a change, go and learn something from men who have taken a break, who say they deserved a break, right? I was, a few weeks back, I was talking to a person for a senior level position in EY, and this person said, you know what, why I'm a best fit for your organization is because I've dabbled in an entrepreneurial venture. I've got these 5 things different that I can bring to the table, which people who have remained in a corporate world would never bring in. So have those kind of examples. I'm sure, you make your case stronger when you feel proud of what you've done rather than, being guilty of what you've done.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a new era of men and women, right? And at Jobs for Her, this is something that we always tell women that, own your career break, own who you are, and use that as a conversation starter, because I think Harshil also rightly said that women are never on a break, right? So there are like thousands of things that you keep doing. So it's just a matter of how you convey the same to the employer, to the person who's in front of you, and use that to your advantage. So with that, would like to end this. Vanita, would you like to add something to the discussion? Yeah, your hand.
I just wanted to conclude with a thought. I want all of our audience to understand and appreciate that careers are no longer linear graphs, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Predictable promotion, rhythmic raises, one role after the other. That's not the norm anymore, right? And I would encourage each of you in the next 1 week to create networking opportunities for yourself that expose you to newer possibilities of meeting new people, pursuing new relationships. And I'm sure that's going to be one additional door that's going to help you advance your career. That's all.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. So to all our panelists and Sonam, thank you so much. It was lovely having you all here because I think it is safe to say that though the year has been very taxing in a lot of different ways, the insights that you have shared are definitely indicative towards a positive workspace and a healthier workspace. And I'm sure it has given all the women who are here a lot more confidence to return to the workforce. To add to what Dr. Vanita has said, yes, networking is also an important key. So we will be right now dropping a link for the career fair, and there is also a chat option. So you can meet other women professionals, like-minded women professionals who are part of the Horizon 2021 conference. Introduce yourself, build your network, build your circle of women. Panelists, it was lovely having you all here. Thank you so much. I hope all of you enjoy the rest of the day with us at Horizon 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you so much, everyone. It was lovely. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone.